The world of gospel music is one built on harmony, the perfect blending of voices that lift the spirit and offer hope to the weary. But on the evening of Thursday, January 7th, 2026, that harmony was shattered. In a quiet farmhouse in Culleoka, Tennessee, a story of 35 years of shared dreams, shared faith, and shared music came to a sudden, heartbreaking pause. David Phelps, the legendary tenor whose voice has reached the rafters of the world's greatest cathedrals and arenas, took to social media not to announce a new tour or a new album, but to share a grief that felt unimaginable. His wife, Lorie Purle Phelps, the woman he called his rock and his unwavering support system, had passed away. She was only 56 years old. The news hit the Christian music community like a thunderclap. For decades, fans didn't just follow David, they followed the Phelps family. They watched the children grow, they saw the farm flourish, and they witnessed a marriage that seemed to embody the very hymns David sang. To understand the weight of this loss, we have to look past the stage lights. We have to look at the woman who stood in the shadows so her husband could stand in the spotlight. Lorie wasn't just a spouse, she was the architect of the Phelps legacy. Tonight, we're going to look at the life of Lorie Phelps, from a chance meeting at a Texas university to her courageous battle with cancer, and the sudden tragedy that has left a family and a global fan base in mourning. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. The rush of the 2025 Christmas tour, a grueling but rewarding series of high-energy performances, had finally settled. The Phelps farm, a sprawling 100-acre sanctuary south of Nashville, was draped in the stillness of a Tennessee winter. As David and Lorie prepared for dinner, there was no warning. There were no lingering symptoms or signs of distress. At 56, Lorie was known for her energy and her active lifestyle on the farm. But in the kitchen, the heart of their home, the silent killer struck. Lorie suffered a massive, catastrophic heart attack. The panic of those moments is something David later touched upon in an interview with the Christian Post. It happened so fast, he recounted, his voice heavy with the shock that only comes from sudden loss. We were just getting ready for dinner, and then everything changed. The emergency response was swift. Medics arrived at the rural property and rushed Lorie to a hospital in nearby Columbia, Tennessee. In the back of that ambulance, and later in the emergency room, teams worked tirelessly. They knew who she was, but more importantly, they knew what she represented to her family. Despite every effort of modern medicine, Lorie Purle Phelps was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The family has since requested privacy, but preliminary reports point toward underlying cardiovascular issues, a reminder that even those who seem the picture of health can be carrying silent burdens. To understand why David and Lorie were so inseparable, you have to go back to the late 1980s at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Imagine a young David Phelps, a vocal performance major with a voice that everyone knew was special, but a future that was still unwritten. It was here that he met Lorie Purle. They didn't just share a faith or a love for music. They shared a birthday, October 21st, 1969. They often joked that this was a sign of divine alignment, a cosmic hint from the Creator that they were meant to walk the same path. Lorie, a Texas native herself, saw the greatness in David before the world did. While he honed his 4-octave range and studied the complexities of classic and gospel arrangements, Lorie was the practical force beside him. They married in 1990 in a small Texas church, exchanging vows that promised in sickness and in health, vows they would eventually be tested on in ways they never expected. In those early years, the life of a musician is rarely glamorous. It involves long drives, small paychecks, and a lot of uncertainty. Lorie was the one who handled the logistics, managed the household, and ensured that David's only focus had to be the ministry of his music. David often told audiences, behind every great man is an even greater woman. And while it's a cliché, for the Phelps family it was a literal truth. She was the CEO of their lives. 1997 changed everything. When David joined the Gaither Vocal Band, his career exploded. Suddenly, the Phelps family wasn't just navigating Texas or Tennessee, they were navigating the world. During David's tenure with the legendary group from 1997 to 2005, And again from 2009 to 2017, he became one of the most recognizable faces in Christian music. Hits like Let Freedom Ring and The Love of God became anthems. But while David was on stage earning Dove Awards and Grammy nominations, Lorie was the one keeping the world turning back home. She traveled extensively with him, often with children in tow. She wasn't just a passenger, she was managing tour logistics and providing the emotional tether David needed during grueling schedules. Think about the pressure of a global tour of the hotels, the travel, the constant public expectation. Lorie was the sanctuary David returned to every night. It was during this time that they moved to the farm in Culleoka. They wanted a place where the kids Callie, Maggie Beth, Grant, and Kobe could grow up away from the hustle of the industry. Lorie took this 100-acre property and turned it into a haven. She raised chickens, goats, and horses. She was a woman of the earth as much as she was a woman of the arts. If the heart attack in 2026 was the sudden storm, the events of 2013 were the long winter. That year, the family received a devastating diagnosis. Lorie had stage 4 colon cancer. In the medical world, stage 4 is a terrifying phrase. It means the battle is uphill and the odds are steep. But this is where the Phelps family's faith moved from the lyrics of a song into the reality of their living room. David stopped everything to be by her side. The music community rallied, and for months, the focus wasn't on high notes or hit records, but on chemotherapy and prayer. Lorie's courage during this time became a beacon for others. She didn't hide her struggle. She and David shared their testimony of God's faithfulness in the midst of fear. David once revealed that Lorie's strength during her treatments inspired him to find new depth in the classic hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." When she eventually went into remission, it felt like a miracle. It gave them 13 more years together, 13 years of weddings, farm chores, and Christmas tours. In hindsight, those years were a gift that David now clings to. As the children grew into adults, Lorie's role shifted but never diminished. She became an entrepreneur in her own right, creating Barn and Bale. She transformed their family barn into a venue for events and workshops. It wasn't just a shop, it was an extension of her heart. She sold handmade goods and family-inspired merchandise, creating a brand that felt like an invitation into their home. If you bought something from Barn and Bale, you weren't just a fan. Lorie made you feel like a guest at their table. This era of their lives was captured in David's vlogs and social media posts. You could see Lorie in the background, often with a smile, always working, whether it was decorating for a Christmas at the farm event or tending to the animals. She was the glue, a term David used repeatedly. The children followed in these creative footsteps. Callie became a songwriter and performer, often standing on stage next to her father. Maggie Beth moved into ministry and education, while Grant and Kobe explored the technical sides of music production. Every success the children had was a reflection of the foundation Lorie had built. When a pillar of a community falls, the reverberations are felt everywhere. Bill Gaither, David's longtime mentor and the patriarch of the Gaither music empire, released a statement that captured the sentiment of many. Lorie was the heart of David's world. Her grace and strength inspired us all. Social media became a digital cathedral of mourning. Michael W. Smith posted about his heartbreak for his friend David. Amy Grant echoed those sentiments. But perhaps most touching were the comments from the fans. Thousands of people shared stories of how Lorie had greeted them at a concert, or how her battle with cancer had given them the strength to face their own. As we look toward the future, the road for David Phelps looks very different. He has put his upcoming spring performances on hold. For a man whose life has been defined by his voice, he currently finds himself in a season of silence. But as he stated in his announcement, the faith that Lorie embodied is the same faith that will carry them through. Lorie is with the Lord now, free from pain, he wrote. We'll see her again, but until then, we'll honor her by living with the faith she embodied. Lorie Purle Phelps was more than a wife, more than a mother, and more than a manager. She was the quiet strength that allowed a legendary voice to sing. As services are planned in Nashville, The Christian music world paused to remember a woman who didn't need a microphone to make a difference. Her legacy lives on in the 4 children she raised, the husband she loved for 35 years, and the 100 acres of Tennessee soil that she called home. The music will eventually return to the Phelps farm, but it will sound different now, a little more somber, perhaps, but also more profound, carrying the weight of a love that truly lasted a lifetime. In the days following Lorie's passing, the farmhouse felt impossibly large. Every familiar sound carried a memory: the creak of the porch steps, the hum of the kitchen refrigerator, the soft wind moving through the trees that bordered the pasture. For David, each sound was a reminder of what had been lost. Lorie had been the rhythm of that house. She woke before dawn, planned meals, checked on animals, answered emails, and still found time to encourage everyone around her. Now the rhythm was gone, replaced by an aching quiet. Friends and family came quickly. Some arrived in person. Others sent handwritten letters, flowers, and messages of prayer. Many didn't know what to say. And David understood that. There are moments when words fail. Grief does that. It strips language down to its most basic form: love, loss, faith, hope. David later shared that the simplest messages meant the most. We are praying. We love you. She mattered. Those words landed gently, like hands on his shoulders. The children processed the loss in different ways. Callie, the oldest, leaned into music. She sat at the piano her mother loved and played quietly, sometimes for hours. Maggie Beth found comfort in scripture, returning again and again to verses her mother had underlined years before. Grant took on responsibilities around the farm, fixing fences and caring for the animals, trying to protect the family from any more pain. Kobe, the youngest, struggled with the suddenness of it all. One moment, their mother was planning dinner. The next, she was gone. It felt unreal. It still does. Lorie had always been the emotional center of the family. She remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and small details others missed. She knew when someone was struggling, even when they didn't say a word. David often said she could read a room better than anyone he knew. That gift extended beyond their home. At concerts, fans would approach David with tears in their eyes, sharing stories of loss or illness. Lorie was often nearby, listening, offering a hug, or praying quietly with them. She never rushed those moments. She believed people mattered more than schedules. Her faith was steady, not flashy. She didn't preach from a stage, but she lived her beliefs every day. During her cancer battle, that faith deepened. Chemotherapy days were long and exhausting. There were moments of fear and uncertainty. Yet Lorie remained grounded. She asked hard questions. She prayed honest prayers. She allowed herself to feel weak when needed. That vulnerability made her strength even more real. People watched her walk through suffering with grace, and it changed them. David has spoken openly about how that season reshaped his understanding of faith. He had sung about trust and surrender for years, but sitting beside Lorie in hospital rooms brought those words into sharp focus. Music took on new meaning. Lyrics became prayers. Silence became sacred. When Lorie entered remission, the family didn't take a single day for granted. Every holiday felt richer. Every ordinary moment felt like a gift. Those years after cancer were filled with intention. Lorie was deliberate about creating memories. She hosted family dinners. She planned gatherings at the farm. She encouraged the children to chase their passions while staying rooted in their faith. Barn and Dale became more than a business. It became a reflection of Lorie's heart for hospitality. People didn't just attend events there. They felt known. They felt welcomed. David often joked that Lorie was better at running things than he ever could be. But behind the humor was deep respect. He trusted her completely. She handled contracts, schedules, and logistics with calm confidence. When David doubted himself, Lorie reminded him who he was and why his voice mattered. She never chased the spotlight, yet her influence reached further than most people ever realize. The night she passed, that influence was felt instantly. The Christian music world paused. Artists who had shared stages with David for decades were suddenly reminded of how fragile life is. Fans who had followed the Phelps family for years felt like they had lost someone they knew personally, and in many ways they had. Lorie had invited them into her life through openness and authenticity. She never pretended perfection. She simply showed up as herself. In the weeks ahead, David faces a future he never imagined. A future without the woman who had been by his side since college, the woman who shared his birthday, his dreams, and his faith, the woman who believed in him before anyone else did. Grief comes in waves. Some days are manageable, others are overwhelming. David knows this journey will take time. He also knows he doesn't walk it alone. Faith does not erase pain. Lorie understood that deeply. But faith gives pain a place to rest. It offers hope beyond what the eyes can see. That hope is what carries David now. It is what carries the children. It is what carries a community that feels the weight of this loss. Lorie Purle Phelps lived a life of quiet impact. She invested in people. She nurtured her family. She stood firm in her beliefs. She loved deeply and without condition. Her legacy is not found in awards or applause, but in lives changed by her presence, in moments of kindness, in years of devotion, in a love story that did not end with death, but continues through memory and faith. The farm in Culleoka still stands. The animals still need care. The seasons will continue to change, and one day music will fill that space again. It will carry sorrow, yes, but it will also carry gratitude. Gratitude for a woman who gave everything she had to those she loved. Gratitude for 35 years of shared life. Gratitude for a love that remains even in absence. Lorie's voice may not have echoed through cathedrals, but her life sang a song that will not be forgotten. In the weeks that followed, time seemed to move in strange ways. Some days passed in a blur, while others felt endless. David often found himself reaching for his phone, ready to call Lorie, forgetting for just a moment that she was no longer there to answer. That moment, when memory and reality collide, became one of the hardest parts of grief. It happened in small, ordinary moments. When he saw something she would have loved, when he needed advice, when he wanted to share a quiet laugh. The kitchen, once full of her presence, became the most difficult room to enter. Lorie loved that space. It was where she planned meals, talked with the children, and prayed quietly while dinner cooked. Now it stood still, almost frozen in time. David admitted that some nights he simply sat at the table, not to eat, but to feel close to her. Grief has a way of turning places into memories, and memories into sacred ground. As funeral arrangements were made, the family faced another painful reality. Saying goodbye publicly meant accepting that Lorie's life had touched far more people than they could count. Messages continued to arrive from across the world. People shared stories of how Lorie's kindness had changed them. Some had met her only once. Others had never met her at all, yet felt deeply connected through her testimony and her faith. It became clear that Lorie's influence reached far beyond the walls of the farm. The service in Nashville was filled with music, prayer, and tears. Songs David had sung thousands of times now carried new meaning. Each lyric felt heavier, more personal. When David stood to speak, his voice did not carry the power audiences were used to. Instead, it carried honesty. He spoke of love, of loss, and of gratitude. He spoke of a woman who gave everything she had, not for recognition, but for family and faith. He told the crowd that Lorie never wanted attention. She wanted impact. She wanted her life to point people toward hope. And in that room, filled with broken hearts, her wish was fulfilled. People did not leave with answers. They left with comfort. They left reminded that love does not end when life does. After the service, the family returned to the farm. Life had to continue, even though nothing felt normal. The animals still needed care. The land still needed tending. In many ways, the farm became a place of healing. Lorie had poured herself into that land, and being there helped the family feel connected to her. Each sunrise over the fields felt like a quiet reminder that life goes on, even in sorrow. David struggled with music during this time. For the first time in his life, singing felt impossible. His voice, once a source of strength, felt fragile. He worried that if he sang, the pain would spill out in ways he couldn't control. And so he chose silence, not as an escape, but as a form of respect. A season of listening instead of performing. Faith, once again, became the anchor. Not a loud faith, not a perfect one, but a steady faith. The kind that holds on even when questions have no answers. David often reflected on something Lorie once told him during her cancer journey. She said, "Faith isn't believing nothing bad will happen. It's believing God is still good when it does." Those words now guided him through the darkest days. The children, too, began finding their own ways forward. They leaned on each other. They shared stories about their mother. They laughed through tears, remembering her sense of humor and her gentle strength. Lorie had prepared them well for life, even for loss. She had taught them resilience, compassion, and the importance of staying connected to God and to one another. Slowly, the world outside the farm began asking questions. Would David return to the stage? Would the music continue? For now, there were no answers. And that was okay. Healing cannot be rushed. Love cannot be replaced. David made it clear that if and when he sang again, it would be because his heart was ready, not because the world expected it. In private moments, David began to write, not songs, but letters. Letters to Lorie. He wrote about the life they shared, the struggles they overcame, the joy they found in ordinary days. Writing became a way to speak when words could not be spoken aloud.